His ears were flushed, and the desire in his eyes had not yet faded. He nervously whispered.
Did you bring it?
I bit my lower lip and handed over a small plastic bag. He quickly took it, his gaze lingering on me for a second.
Thank you.
As I walked out of the hotel, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Ethan. My hand holding the phone trembled inexplicably, and I remained silent for a long time. After a while, I replied with a simple okay. I was Ethan's bag carrier, officially his assistant. But I thought my position was probably one that all of Ethan's fans would fight tooth and nail to have.
I guess I got this job because when Ava walked past rows of people, their faces were filled with joy and anticipation. Only I remained silent and unremarkable.
Ava, Ethan's manager, always kept a close eye on the people around him. As her most popular star, she wouldn't let him have any slip-ups in his personal life. So, among the many beauties, Ava pointed to me, a junior intern, and said,
"You come with me."
I was indeed very lucky. The first time I saw Ethan, he had just finished a dance class and was sitting in a private lounge at the company, wearing a black baseball cap, a black t-shirt, black pants, and sneakers. He was a beautiful young man of only 19. When I walked in, he looked up, smiled at me, and politely said,
Hello, Sophia. I'm Ethan.
That was the first time I saw such clear eyes, untouched by the mundane world, completely different from the boys at school who always wore lecherous grins. He was the cleanest person I had ever seen. At least, that's how he appeared the first time I met him. Then, he gave me a shocking surprise. He stood up, towering over me, and took long strides towards me until he had me backed against the glass door, so close that I could feel his breath. The proximity made me so nervous I almost couldn't breathe. I was confused, my mind blank, and my heart pounding. He suddenly bent down, leaning in as if to kiss me. Just as my consciousness was about to leave my body, I snapped back to reality and politely pushed him away. Then, I saw Ava behind him, nodding at him. I let out a long sigh of relief. It was indeed a trap. If I hadn't pushed him away, I might have been packing my bags to leave by now.
Sorry,
He said, a bit embarrassed, rubbing his nose. I noticed his ears were red and thought to myself, he's quite an actor. If he ever decides not to be an idol, he could consider acting. I was somewhat socially anxious and rarely spoke to people, which was probably why Ava thought I was reliable. In the 5 years I had known Ethan, we had always maintained a polite distance, neither of us being particularly proactive. However, there were times when he was a bit mischievous. Once, when our whereabouts were leaked, we were swarmed by enthusiastic fans at the airport. There were banners, photos, letters, autograph requests, and onlookers, causing the airport to be completely blocked.
the shouting, chanting, noise, and disputes.
I knew how uncomfortable and impatient he was. I must have looked quite disheveled, desperately protecting him, with my hair in disarray, clothes askew, and hands grabbed by who knows whom. I half-hugged him with my arm, trying to keep anyone from touching him. After we got in the car, I had just finished a call with Ava when I saw Ethan staring at me in surprise.
What's wrong?
I smiled, thinking he was scared by the scene.
Sophia. Your face.
I didn't understand and opened my phone to see a half-inch scratch on my face, slightly red. It seemed to have been caused by a fan's letter in the crowd. Fortunately, it wasn't deep, just a surface scratch. Otherwise, my already unremarkable face would have been ruined. I awkwardly tried to cover it, but he had already taken a photo with his phone and was proudly showing off my beautiful picture. I was furious and tried to grab his phone, but tripped and fell into his arms. He smelled of lemon, a faint scent that made me suddenly aware of our overly close distance. I quickly pulled back, my face burning.
I'll keep that beautiful picture forever.
I pouted, telling myself not to argue with a child. That night, as I was bringing back dinner, Ava called urgently, confirming the airport incident with me. I didn't know what had happened and could only mechanically answer her questions. After a while, I received a text from Ava, asking me to have Ethan apologize on social media immediately. I had a bad feeling and quickly checked social media. Sure enough, there was a new trending topic: Ethan's fans causing a disturbance at the airport, attracting the police. Skimming through a few posts, they were all about the incident at the airport that morning. After we left, fans and stalkers had clashed, causing chaos and bringing in the police. I rushed to the dressing room next door. Ethan was quietly sitting in a chair, scrolling through his phone. I didn't know if he was looking at social media, but his dejected expression told me he had seen the trending topic. I noticed his expression change from aggrieved to defiant, and finally to a resigned silence. He had to take the blame for everything because people didn't know the fans or stalkers, only him. So, he was the one being scolded. Seeing him with his head down, my heart ached so much it was hard to breathe. When he saw me, he smiled and said,
What's wrong? Why do you look so upset?
I moved my lips but said nothing.
They're scolding me, not you. Why do you look like that? Do you like me or something?
All the comforting words I had prepared were stuck in my throat, and I glared at him. He deserved to be scolded more. 2 weeks later, during an outdoor shoot involving horseback riding, he seemed to be in a good mood. However, there was a small mishap when the horse he was riding suddenly became uncontrollable, almost throwing him off. In a moment of desperation, I rushed to save him but ended up getting hurt. As a result, he was unharmed, but I got kicked by the horse. Fortunately, it was just a bruise on my knee, not too serious. I sat on a small stool with a sun hat, resting, when Ethan walked over with long strides and squatted down. His face was full of guilt, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up, showing he wanted to laugh.
Do you have any conscience at all?
Ethan glanced at me as he put down his phone, his tone casual.
They're scolding me, not you. Why do you look like that? Do you like me or something?
All the comforting words I had prepared were stuck in my throat, and I glared at him.
You deserve to be scolded more.
They were scolding me, not you. Why do you look like that?
Do you like me or something?
All the comforting words I had prepared were stuck in my throat, and I glared at him. He deserved to be scolded more. 2 weeks later, during an outdoor shoot involving horseback riding, Ethan seemed to be in a good mood. However, there was a small mishap when the horse he was riding suddenly became uncontrollable, almost throwing him off.
Ethan, hold on!
In a moment of desperation, I rushed to save him but ended up getting hurt. As a result, he was unharmed, but I got kicked by the horse. Fortunately, it was just a bruise on my knee, not too serious. I sat on a small stool with a sun hat, resting, when Ethan walked over with long strides and squatted down. His face was full of guilt, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up, showing he wanted to laugh.
Do you have any conscience at all?
A month later, we rushed to the studio to shoot a new commercial. The sky was overcast, but it wasn't raining.
Sophia, we left a pair of shoes at the previous location and we're about to start shooting. Can you go get them?
After asking for the exact location of the shoes, I took off running. Luckily, I found the shoes quickly and hurried back with the shoebox. Unfortunately, it started pouring rain as soon as I stepped outside. I ran through the rain, clutching the shoebox. Though I quickly found shelter, the heavy rain had already soaked me from head to toe. I shivered in front of a closed store. The rain showed no signs of stopping and seemed to be getting heavier. I called David for help, but for some reason, no one answered.
Suddenly, a bright car light shone on me, and a familiar car slowly stopped in front of me. A familiar figure got out, holding a black umbrella, and walked quickly towards me.
James? What are you doing here?
Get in the car first.
Once in the car, he turned the heater up to the maximum and handed me a box of tissues to dry off. Then he started the car and drove back to the studio.
I saw you running out when I arrived at the studio. I called out to you, but you didn't hear me. I was worried it might rain, so I followed you. I'm glad I found you.
I felt a mix of emotions. How could he think of that? This man must be an angel, right? Or a saint reincarnated.
Back at the studio, Ethan saw my disheveled state. He grabbed my arm, frowned, and was about to say something when he noticed James behind me.
Mr. You?
James nodded politely in greeting.
After a busy day of shooting, everything went smoothly, and I had nothing else to do, so I went back to the break room. Suddenly, I saw a cup of warm ginger tea on the table with my name on it.
Time flew by, and as the new year approached, the streets were filled with the unique joy of winter. Every TV station was preparing for the New Year's Eve concert. Ethan had cleared his schedule but wasn't idle at all. He was going to perform an original song on stage and only slept 4 hours a day, spending the rest of his time in the practice room. My job was to order his meals and wait for him to eat. This New Year's Eve concert was also my last task. I had promised Ava that I would resign after the concert. So, this was my last journey with Ethan. This time, it's really goodbye. We might never cross paths again in this lifetime. But I still hadn't figured out how to tell him. And James, I hadn't seen him since the last shoot. I hadn't properly thanked him for what he did last time. One night, it was already 9 o'clock, and Ethan was still discussing the arrangement with his teacher. I sat in a corner playing on my phone. Suddenly, I received a message from James.
I'm downstairs at your company. Can we meet?
I glanced at Ethan, who seemed likely to practice late again. I replied and quietly put on my coat and went downstairs. James stood outside the company, holding a small bag. He wore a coat that made him look even taller, but he seemed a bit tired.
What brings you here?
I just got back from a business trip and passed by your company. I wanted to see you.
I opened it to find 2 cups of hot milk tea, my favorite flavor.
Thank you. But how did you know I was at the company?
If I want to know, I will.
We walked side by side on the streetlights adding a touch of warmth to the night. Suddenly, a few snowflakes fell from the sky, landing on my face, cold and refreshing, dispelling the drowsiness I felt upstairs.
Is it the first snow? I smiled happily. The world felt so quiet. I turned to see James staring at me intently, making me feel a bit embarrassed. He moved closer and pulled the hood of my coat over my head. I couldn't look him in the eye and kept my head down. His fingers brushed my face, warm and gentle.
Sophia, you're very cute.
My mind went blank for a second.
Much cuter than when I first saw you. You might not know, but I first saw you at the shoot with Ethan and Sarah. He paused, then continued, but you were always looking at him, so you probably didn't notice me.
No wonder I always felt like I had worked with him before.
I could tell you liked him back then.
My heart skipped a beat. Why? I always thought I hid it well. How did Sarah and James see through me?
Sophia. I looked up. Can you give me a chance?
The city, usually vibrant at night, felt especially quiet. Snowflakes fell on his shoulders, turning into water droplets. James looked at me seriously, as if he needed an answer. I bit my lip.
I'm sorry. He didn't seem surprised, but his eyes dimmed a bit. I suddenly felt very uncomfortable. As I turned to leave, my eyes inexplicably filled with tears.
2 weeks later, during an outdoor shoot involving horseback riding, Ethan seemed in high spirits. However, an unexpected mishap occurred when the horse he was riding became uncontrollable, nearly throwing him off.
Terrified, Ethan, watch out.
In a moment of desperation, Sophia rushed to save him but ended up getting hurt herself. As a result, Ethan remained unharmed, but Sophia received a bruise on her knee. Sitting on a small stool with a sun hat, Sophia rested. Ethan approached her with long strides, guilt etched on his face, though a small smile betrayed his amusement.
Friendly, are you okay?
Angry, do you have any conscience at all?
A year later, I was with James. Nothing special happened, it just happened naturally.
Remember that rainy shoot when you ran out to get shoes? I later came out to find you.
Yes, and I still haven't thanked you for the ginger tea in the lounge that day.
Ginger tea? I didn't buy any ginger tea.
My gaze froze for a second, then I smiled and lightly brushed off the topic. One day, I received a small anonymous package. Inside was a delicate jewelry box, and when I opened it, there was a familiar ring, though a size smaller, with JS engraved inside. There was also a card. It read, "The ring you gave me back then, I made an identical one. I hope you like it." My mind buzzed. Once, on Ethan's birthday, there was a grand birthday party, and we rushed to the airport for the next event afterward. On the way, I suddenly remembered I hadn't given him a birthday gift. I saw a stall selling small jewelry by the roadside, and there happened to be a ring with XY engraved inside, which was his name reversed. When I gave it to him, he took it, looked at it, and laughed.
Why is the name reversed? Too careless, huh?
There were no other letters, just a reversed YX dot.
I felt a bit embarrassed, thinking of the gifts he received at the birthday party, wondering if this trinket would be too shabby for him. He just smiled, said nothing more, put the ring away, and softly thanked me. He always carried that ring with him. Turns out, he remembered all along. It was me who forgot.
Perhaps we once had a chance.
I felt my eyes getting a bit moist, forcibly suppressing the strange emotions, and put the ring back into the jewelry box, locking it deep in the drawer. One evening, James and I were having dinner at his place. He wore an apron, busy in the kitchen, looking quite the part. I felt embarrassed to just sit and wait, so I helped him in the kitchen. His cooking skills were really good. I originally thought someone like him would only order takeout. Halfway through the meal, my phone rang. It was Ethan calling. I instinctively glanced at James.
Go ahead, answer it.
Sorry, I'll just be a moment.
I went to the balcony to take the call.
Grace, where are you?
At my boyfriend's place.
Boyfriend?
Yeah, we're getting married soon.
When did you?
He wanted to say something more but suddenly stopped.
Nothing. I just wanted to ask if you'd like to come over for a meal. Since that's the case, maybe next time.
He didn't mention the ring. We fell into silence again. After a long while, a cautious voice came from the other end.
Will we have a chance to meet again?
Just as I didn't know how to answer.
Forget it, let's not talk about this. When you get married, don't forget to invite me to the wedding.
Okay.
When I returned to the dining table, my face was calm, and James was also calm, not asking anything more, just wholeheartedly peeling shrimp for me, already filling a whole bowl. 2 weeks later, during an outdoor shoot involving horseback riding, Ethan seemed to be in a good mood. However, there was a small mishap when the horse he was riding suddenly became uncontrollable, nearly throwing him off.
Ethan, watch out!
In a moment of desperation, Sophia rushed to save him but ended up getting hurt.
At least he's safe.
Fortunately, it was just a bruise on her knee. She sat on a small stool with a sun hat, resting when Ethan walked over with long strides and squatted down. His face was full of guilt, but the corners of his mouth couldn't help but turn up, showing he wanted to laugh.
Are you okay? I didn't mean for you to get hurt.
Do you have any conscience at all?